tunnel. Sorry, I didn't pack you any food. You'll be fine. Go eat your hay. Normally my mower brings them food. It's their food truck. Except for it's not food time. So every year, we've been growing in this is our third summer, I believe, growing in the greenhouse. And I let it get out of hand every year. I let all of my garden spaces get out of hand every year. I think it's just sort of a thing when you have gardens, really of any size. And it's definitely clean out time. So we have big plans for this greenhouse and it's really time that we execute them. It's hard to tell what's going on here right now. But we used to garden in ground in here, and we found that it wasn't something that was going to work for us over winter. Because we live on old tobacco farmland, all the rocks and things have been tilled out of our land, which sounds awesome, and it is sometimes, but over the fall and winter and early spring, we basically just live in a mud hole, and it makes winter planting in ground essentially impossible because the roots of the plants are just absolutely saturated. And we put in this big greenhouse and we were really unable to use it. Now, I have had some successful things that I've grown in this greenhouse, but not as much as I really should have been getting. So we have been working all year off and on to put the raised beds in the greenhouse, but we're getting down to crunch time where we really have to get the raised beds in because I need to get the plants in. So we've got these here. There's 6 beds that make up the middle, and then I've got some along the edge. So there's gonna be 4 of these 3 foot by 6 foot beds on either side. Wow, look at this huge pepper. This is the yellow monster pepper, which put on some small peppers earlier in the year, but that's probably more what the size is supposed to look like. You're not gonna let that grass clod win, are you?
I might leave it.
Okay, yeah, it'll be fine. Be able to tell, we do have weed fabric laid down here in the greenhouse, and that has done really well. We just placed this on top of our field and it has really kept down most of the weeds. But like I said, we do have a really muddy, mucky type ground in the fall and winter, and when we walk through here in the fall and winter, like the mud will just squish up through the weed fabric, and that will place the mud on top of the weed fabric, which allows a space for weeds to grow. This time of year, it doesn't look too bad. We're able to hand pick the weeds and kind of use the leaf blower to blow things out, but stuff definitely still grows through it. I've kind of decided that I'm not gonna really be worrying too much about layering down the weed fabric in the walkways and things. In our other garden, I just weed whack in the middle of the beds and it works out fine, and that may be the point we get to in here. And to be honest, grass in the walkways is a lot easier to manage than weed fabric, because weed fabric definitely takes upkeep. It's not just a set it and forget it. called it pretty good.
Was that far off.
Wow, we did pretty well.
Off of what the other one is. That's it.
Perfect. Wow, we did good. So we are going to be throwing the refuse weeds in here. We're not going to be putting any soil in this bed for a little bit, and so these are going to have a chance to really die off. And I don't have any of that like crabgrass type stuff out in the greenhouse here, so there's none of those like rhizome type roots that could take root in the bed. But even if there were, that's just something that we do deal with from time to time, and we just pull it, and it's really not a big deal. This stuff is very valuable to help fill the beds because it's very expensive to fill raised beds, and to put some of the nutrition that was taken out of our ground by these weeds, it helps give it back to our garden. Okay, so it's a little bit later on in the same day. We got 2 of the 4 remaining beds that I need to get built for the greenhouse built. We'll probably get the other 2 put together tonight, and then we just need to fill them. I have some of the soil here. I need to clean out the barn. I have some mushroom compost that I'm really excited to be using as a soil amendment this year in a lot of the garden. But I do also need to start some seeds. Whoops. At the moment they're trying to fly away. So I have started a lot of my fall garden already. I have some kale, another type of cabbage. I'm planting a different one today. It's the Gloria of Eukenheisen cabbage that I've already planted. That one takes a little bit longer. This one is like a 45-day cabbage. I tried to grow these earlier in the year, but I was trying to grow them into the heat in some soil that was really lacking, and so they didn't get a great start. So I'm going to be trying them again for fall. And I also started some cauliflower and some broccoli. But what I'm going to be planting today is that 45-day cabbage. It is the Golden Cross cabbage, some red Russian kale, some spinach. I'm not great at growing spinach, but I sure try. And then some Swiss chard. So I got my seed trays here. These are 16 cells per tray. We get these from Epic Gardening, and these are pretty small. I really like to start a ton of plants because you don't always get 100% germination, and I have very limited space inside my grow area inside the house. I'm actually not going to be using that grow area for these seeds. Our weather is going to be mild enough to where I can use the outdoors to start my seeds, and so far the seeds that I have started out here, the birds haven't messed with them, but that can happen too. That can be a reason for me to start seeds inside. But most of these seeds are about the same size, so they're going to be sown at the same depth. So I'm just going to be putting about a 1/4 inch hole in the center of all of these little cells. Now we do have a couple temps in the low 90s this week, and then it goes right back down, and I think we're officially in fall at that point. And those couple days of 90-degree temperatures are not going to bother these little baby seeds. It actually might help them germinate. Little tiny cabbage seeds. Depending on how I am starting my seeds, I will put several seeds in one planting hole just to ensure that I get a decent germination. Because these cells give me so many different planting holes, I am only going to put 2 seeds per hole instead of like 3 or 4. The seedlings can probably live in this cell tray for a maximum of about a month before they're going to really be needing some more nutrition. The way that these cells are designed is pretty cool. Sometimes when a seedling spends a long time inside any kind of pot that it's a little bit too big for, the roots can like make their way to the edge of the pot and then start spiraling around, and you get what's called a root-bound plant. And that plant usually it tends to suffer from it. Some plants can never really bounce back too well from that, but the way the inside of these pots are designed, they'll direct the roots downwards, and there's a little bit of an air pruning effect so that the roots tend to not get overgrown. So there's a little bit of grace there for us with that. But no matter how well the pot is designed, the little amount of nutrition that is in this potting mix, that will run out, and they will need either some nutrition or some more space, and we'll be able to give that to them.
I told him I had a game to see who could fall asleep the quickest. The person who falls asleep wins. And Addison said,
Should probably win.
What do we get if we win? I said, nap.
This here is the Swiss chard seed. It looks really, really cool. I'm probably only going to put 1 seed per hole because this is a lot of starts for chard, and I probably don't need this many plants, so if there is a little bit less than ideal germination, it's not going to be a big deal. The spinach seed is also a little bigger. I don't know what it is, but spinach has been so hard for me to grow. And I've heard that from several people. I actually had a spinach plant that made it through my neglect last year, and I just let it grow. I didn't even harvest it because I was worried about over harvesting it and killing it, so I just got to enjoy it. I was planning on keeping the seed from that spinach, but for some reason, even though it flowered, I never did see any seed set out of it. And last but not least, the kale seed. And this looks a lot like the cabbage seed because they're in the same family, the brassica family. This variety of kale, it's also called the Ragged Jack kale, I believe, is one of the hardiest kales that I have seen. We have grown quite a lot of kale, and this variety is the one that can handle the cold temps and really like the fluctuations of the seasons, because we go like hot, cold until about January, and January is our coldest month, and that's the only like consistency that we have. We know we can expect January to be cold, and the Ragged Jack or red Russian kale that I've grown in the past has been able to withstand all of that with good flavor. And that can be one of the kickers, is that sometimes kales and things can really be kind of bitter if they are a little bit stressed, but this stays really consistent and it's nice. Over here is my outdoor seed starting station, which it looks like my cats have been leaving it alone. These are, I don't know if it's cabbage or cauliflower. It kind of looks like cauliflower to me, but I didn't label things well, so we'll get to figure that out when they get bigger. I broadcasted some lettuce seed in here. This is like a romaine type lettuce, and this was just 2 days ago, so we don't have any germination to see yet. But here I put in some root vegetables. I've seen a couple people start some root vegetables in some start trays, so I figured I would try that. These are some beets here. This is rutabaga. I had started some dinosaur kale right here, but I think it was older seed because it doesn't look like it had any germination. And then this is 2 different colors of kohlrabi. And actually in the cart I have one of our grow bags that I brought up from the greenhouse area in order to amend. I did put in some of the mushroom compost that I have on the top of this here. And I'd like to sow some carrot seed. So earlier in the year I grew some pretty good carrots in the greenhouse. And to be honest, I have grown carrots into the fall once. It was actually my first garden. So if you're not aware of our situation, we moved here. It was a military move, and I initially had come to stay at the farm while Levi was deployed with the military. And so that garden year, I did the gardening thing and the homestead maintenance. I grew some chickens and everything all by myself with the 4 kids. And it was definitely an adventure, but I planted some carrot seed before we went back to Kansas to go retrieve him from his deployment. And I just sort of left the garden to his own devices. And actually the carrots grew when we actually came down. I think it was in December when we officially got here. I had carrots and I was so excited. I at least had the tops of them. And then one morning when I went to go look at the garden, it looked like a rabbit had completely mowed down all of the tops of my carrots, and I was so heartbroken. But you know, I surrounded the little area in there, I'm looking over here because it was in my raised bed garden, but I surrounded it with some chicken wire and the tops grew back, and I got some carrots. They weren't, you know, the best carrots that I've ever grown. I have never had like a super awesome carrot harvest. Actually, the carrot harvest that I had this past spring was one of the better carrot harvests that I've ever had. So we're gonna try for something similar in here today. So when I grew those carrots this spring, I used a couple different sowing methods. I had done the cornstarch slurry that some people do, where you kind of pre-germinate the seed inside some cornstarch, and that helps you with some spacing. And then I just did what I am used to doing, which is just sprinkling the seed down. And I did not find that there was any quicker germination or better germination or anything like that with either type of sowing, and so it's easiest just to put the seed down in the soil and water it in, so that's what I'm gonna do. Here's carrot seed. It is kind of windy today. Just gonna be it looks haphazard because I guess it kind of is. Down on the top. I am gonna sow these pretty densely in order to thin them out later. I bought this carrot seed at the end of last year and it's still good, but carrot seed, from what I hear, is one of the seeds that does tend to go down in its germination rate as the seed gets older. And these are the same carrots that I grew earlier in the year, the envy carrot. So I've just scattered them on top of the compost that I did moisten this morning, and then I'm just going to be putting a thin layer of potting soil on top to cover them up just ever so slightly. And then these are the other seeds that we just sowed. I'm going to set them like this on the carrots, and this is going to be fine. The carrots will germinate fine underneath of this tray, and it's going to help. I don't know if you can tell, but it's a little bit breezy today. It's going to help the surface of the soil not dry out, and I will be peeking under here, moistening the soil probably every day, if not 2 times a day. And then once I see everything has been well germinated, I can move this off. I have gotten a couple questions about our seed starting setup, and this is all it is. So this is the entryway to our home. This is a big freezer that we have. These are some squash that I have harvested, and these are just 2 LED shop lights. A lot of people will say you can't use LED lights. Yes, you can, especially if they're full spectrum. You want at least 3,000 lumens, and you want the lights to be pretty close to the plants. So this is the cabbage, cauliflower, and broccoli. Some of it's still outside. I am going to start introducing these guys to the outside periodically to help them get used to the wind, get used to the intensity of the sun, because pretty soon these are going to go in the greenhouse, but I do need to clean it out some more. You guys ready for your food? I wanted to get my hand on Talia's udder real quick because when I moved her into the breeding pen here with Mooch, I did essentially wean her from her daughter Ilara, who has been nursing since February. And so I've been watching her because she's been drying up, but it looks like she's drying up more on one side than the other, and I wanted to make sure she wasn't experiencing mastitis. So her udder does not feel hard, it does not feel hot. It's just probably her daughter was favoring one side, and that side is still producing more milk than the other side. So I'll keep my eye on her. Yeah, that's how that goes.
I get the nasty ones. You gotta get one too. They want to get straight coming back.
Yeah, it is. Does anyone else store things in their green stock watering tray? It was definitely one of my goals to take better care of my green stalks this year. And this is the first green stalk that I ever had, and I think I've done a pretty good job keeping it looking good throughout the season. I do need to be revamping my others because I bought 3 more this year, but they all look pretty good. I've at least watered them all, so the soil is at least still decent. I added this fertilizer to the water today. I don't always do that. I try to do that at least once a month though. Come on. Are you recording a good video? Is it on? The battery died? Okay, I'll take it off. This is a reminder to those of you that don't know, is that I did make a second channel where I put a little camera on various different animals, mostly cats and goats at this point, but I have some thoughts about putting it on some chickens at some point too. I'll link the new channel in the description box. You can see all the fun things that the animals get up to. Anyway, it is the next day now, and I've got my harvest basket because even though we are in the transition between seasons, I do still have quite a few things growing and needing harvesting. Here's a peep at the loofah tunnel. Some of our loofah are starting to turn brown. This is my second year growing loofah, and last year they got kind of a late start, and so I didn't have any really turn brown before our first frost. So I harvested them green and got some really awesome sponges. Even though the loofah were green, a lot of them were like this. But it does look like we'll be getting some brown crispy loofahs pretty soon. Hi, Monty. It's not cat food. So as you can see, if you are new to the channel, I have a couple different growing spaces. We have the greenhouse that we've been cleaning out. I have the lane, which we're going to go on right now and pick a few cowpeas. But I also have this area. This is my raised bed garden. This I'm turning into sort of a perennial space. I've got quite a few annual things sort of in the front of the garden here. But as you go further back, there's things like grapes and strawberries, elderberry, asparagus. There's actually some perennial onions right here that I need to show you how they're doing. Excuse me, Jackie. These are walking onions, and they have put on some more greens for the season, which is really neat. This space still has quite a lot going on in it, and it can wait. The greenhouse, it has a lot going on in it right now too, but I really need that space to be cleared out for our fall and winter garden before I worry about this space right here. One of the things that I think I would like to try in this space this year, something that I dabbled with a little bit earlier in the season. Let's go back by the blueberries. No, see, this is what we don't want. I need to finish my hoop house so you don't get in there. Back here are a few, it's actually 4 blueberry plants that we put in earlier in the year. These are legacy blueberries, and before I laid down mulch, I had actually mulched with alyssum. And that alyssum is in the brassica family. It's this plant that has a really like non-invasive root system. It works really well when planted super close to something else. It gets pretty bushy. It has some lovely little flowers. It technically is edible, but the most important thing about it is it acts like a really nice mulch. It makes a really great ground cover, and that mulched this bed really well earlier in the season. I have been using mulches like this. This is hardwood bark mulch in my garden for several years, and I do like it. One of the reasons that you won't really see me mulching with things like straw or even like pine needles, people will mulch with those. I don't necessarily mulch with things like grass clippings or like shredded paper. All of that can and does work. Right now we're having some very calm weather, but that is not the norm. Very regularly we get some decent winds that take whatever mulch I have laid down and just blows it away, and so I need something that's just gonna stay in the bed. So the hardwood bark mulch has worked really well for several years. One of the catches with it though, when we go to replant the space, if I want to amend the garden, I need to pull back that mulch and put in my amendments underneath, because if I just laid my amendments on top of that bark, the bark itself would use the nutrients in the compost or the new soil that I put down in order to break itself down. That's one of the things about those like heavily barky soils that you can get at the store now, and why the nutrition in a lot of soils is kind of lacking. It's because there's a lot of non-broken down materials in those soils in the form of mulch. So as far as making sure my beds are covered to help protect the soil underneath and to help the moisture retention and feeding the soil underneath, I really do want to keep my beds covered, but I'm trying to figure out a better way. And I think this year, I haven't gotten to it yet, but I will be doing it. I'm going to be leaning more into like winter cover crops. So the alyssum that I talked about before, it's a great ground cover, but it's not necessarily something nutrient dense enough to be able to till in necessarily as like a cover crop. I think I'm going to put that in some spots, but there are some seeds that you can plant that are known as like a green manure. And I'm not necessarily talking in compost terms where green would be like a green manure would be something that is hot, like it's got too much active nitrogen in it and it could potentially burn your plants. This is just called green manure because it is plants. And the idea is that you'll plant the seed right around this time, right around September, I guess maybe through November and December, depending on your area, and let these things somewhat establish so that their foliage and things can cover the soil and help protect it. And then in the springtime, before they go to seed, you can actually till these things under and they add nutrition to the bed. So I have these daikon driller radishes. So these don't only add nutrition into the bed if we let them break down in the bed, but they actually aerate the soil and help feed the soil microbes. So we've got this. I actually have a ton of this crimson clover, 15 pounds of it, that I'm going to be putting out on our pasture to help bring some nutrition out there. But it's also very good in the small garden sense as a cover crop. You want to till this under, chop and drop, and add it to your soil before it goes to seed. But this is a really good one for cover crops. And we also have white clover. Both of these things. Clover is a legume, and so they are nitrogen fixers, especially when you chop and drop them or till them under in the spring. They add a lot of good nutrition into your beds. And so this is a good thing to have on hand and to plant, especially if you have a smaller garden or smaller homestead and you don't have a lot of animals and a lot of manure at your disposal. This is a really great way to add organic matter back to your beds. That also does work for you over the fall and winter by helping cover your beds and protect the microbiome within them. Now, I'm mentioning this to you right now before I've had the chance to put these in my beds because there is a sale going right now with So Right Seeds. I mentioned to you guys a couple videos ago that a lot of seed companies and garden related companies will do a lot of sales at the end of the year. Seed companies do it because they need to get rid of inventory. They're not allowed to sell seed that's packed for 2024 in 2025, so you guys can get good deals on seeds this time of year. I do have an affiliate link that I'm going to put in the description box and the pinned comment right now. Cover crops are on sale and you can stack our coupon code. I've got this super sweet 100 tomato plant I put here earlier in the year that has finally started to produce. I just sort of plopped it in an empty space right there and it's done really well. Good morning, sirs. How are you? We're on our way to the lane. What's your boyfriend doing down there? Excuse you, sir. Are you ringing the dinner bell? It's not time. It's not. So we had a situation out here on the lane where I thought my drip irrigation was watering out here fine, and it turns out it was not. There was a clog somewhere, and a lot of our chicken and dumplings cowpeas really started to suffer. I am seeing what looks to me like more green. I don't know if it's just hopeful feelings or not, but I've got some pods that I want to collect out here, and I might not pick them all on video, but I'll pick a few. Oh, see, we do have some signs of life. So I've got some new pods here, and then this here is a flower. So it's not dead yet. How many of you know that reference? I love it. Few ants, very common. I guess the nectar in these flowers is quite sweet. I have started shutting the door to the greenhouse, partially because our neighbor's dog has been coming over here and he gets under the cow fence over there. He has been known to get in my garden beds and to dig them up. So we don't want that. So we'll close him out. These are super sweet 100s over here too. Over here are some of my favorites. These are called Blue Cream Berry. You can see the little blue shoulders that they have. I do have the shade cloth over my greenhouse still, so this blue isn't as vibrant as it would be if they were grown out in full sun, but it's still there and they're still delicious. These are the strawberry tomatoes, and in the past these plants haven't been the healthiest. I've never really gotten them to last a full season, and even though like none of my tomato plants were super healthy this year, I still expected these to succumb first, and they didn't. They've been doing really well. Oh gravy, what did you find? You got that out of the cat's mouth?
He was just slapping it on the ground and it was flapping, trying to get away.
Say that again?
He was just slapping it on the ground.
Oh my goodness, that's the bird he had?
Yes. Yeah, it's still alive. It tried to bite me.
Anyway, these tomatoes are very delicious and they're gorgeous. And it looks like I have underestimated the harvest we were gonna get, because this is what I brought out for the cherry tomatoes, and there's a lot here. We'll just have to use the rest of the basket. And as far as the slicer tomatoes, we've got a lot of green ones on. Some of them are starting to turn, and so this one we can pick. There's a gorgeous one high up. Look at it. This is the Ponderosa pink tomato, and there's quite a few green ones way up there. See them up here? There's a bunch, and a lot of them are really big. What I'm choosing to do is actually pick them green, make a green tomato relish and other green tomato type things, and then pull these tomatoes out. I had intended to put that in this video, but I'm actually gonna put it in the next greenhouse clean out video, because this is definitely gonna take multiple weeks. My goal is to have this whole thing cleaned out by October, but I can tell that this video is already plenty long. So I'm going to end it here, and I'll see you guys back on the channel again very soon.